I'm Merel Van Helsdingen. I'm the founder and director of Next Museum, which is a museum dedicated to new media art in Amsterdam. We work on the intersection of science, tech, art, and sound and bring that together. And it was 2019 and 20 that we converted a TV studio into a large exhibition space for art and tech, which was right in the middle of the pandemic. So we've had some very challenging times, but also it was the most interesting time, I think, in history to start a space dedicated to this type of art, because it's, the biggest disruption, I think, is happening at the moment in the art world related to Web3 and tech.
So what was your goal with Next? What was your mission?
So mission of Next is really to constantly seek, show, question and debate what is next, mainly in the world of art, but it's also in the worlds of science, for example, and sound, and combining that and bringing that together. And part of that kind of vision or mission, let's say, is also then emerging technologies. So for us, it's part of our DNA to work with emerging technologies, but also research emerging technologies and give makers and thinkers the opportunity to understand these technologies and the tools to work with them and display them.
What are some of the challenges of bringing digital art into a physical space?
Well, first of all, the technology and the hardware you need is so different to traditional museum spaces that you should almost cut out everything you know about what a museum is or should be. So we moved from white cube to black box. We moved from a space where it has to be quiet and where you cannot take any photos and where it closes at 5 p.m. We wanted to do it totally differently. And so we built a black box full of, with a lot of electricity, full of hardware to present the work of the artist in the way they wanted to present it. So new media art is quite broad. So we have 3D printed sculptures. So they use technology to develop the work, but it's a physical piece. But we also have, for example, a light installation with laser arms that are robotic arms that are moving. So that means you need a kind of computer system to operate them. You need high ceilings, you need ventilation for the smoke, you need a dark room, you need acoustic finishes, and we have some spaces with projection as well. So the whole infrastructure of the museum changes, the way you build it, and also, really, how do you get that? How do you get to the level of that hardware, and how do you also maintain it? Because hardware is evolving so quickly, software is evolving so quickly, that maybe when you buy a set of projectors in 2019, in 2023, they're not working anymore with the art that you receive from the artists who have advanced so much in the work they make. So the challenges are mainly, I think, installing and showcasing this type of work.
How does it affect your curatorial decisions, like from a planning position?
So the curatorial decisions when it comes to displaying digital art are very, I would also say, potentially quite different to traditional. We think it's very important to give a stage to the artist and the story behind it, but we also want to create a space where you can actually experience the work and not obstruct the work with, for example, text and explanation. So curatorially, we really try to tell the story in a way that people are taken on a journey, get the chance to go deeper, but also at the same time experience the work without any distractions, let's say. But also curating the artworks, we try to curate different types of digital artworks. So it doesn't feel repetitive, and we want to show the different types of art and tech there are. It's not just projection or digital. It is very varied, like cyborg art, augmented reality. And with that comes also education. So I think you need to educate people on what they see, but also how to interact with it.
And obviously this is a very new space. This is an opportunity to show new and very different kinds of art. do you also take it as an opportunity to showcase and elevate new and different kinds of artists?
So the artists and the types of artists we curate for the exhibitions we've done 2 exhibitions, and they're all group shows of various artists. We look, first of all, at the common theme and the common ground there is, and what is the story we want to tell, but also really picking a diverse selection of artists, with a strong focus on female artists, for example, but also artists from every corner of the world. And what is really interesting is because of the kind of explosion of digital art during the pandemic, it also opened up our window into where and what types of art are being made across the globe. And for me personally as well, collecting, I really started discovering new talent, from African digital artists to artists in Australia, or maybe artists in Iran, for example, that would normally not really get the chance to show their work, or I would normally not discover them because they're not represented by the traditional gallery spaces or auction houses. And I think what that meant for us, curating the first exhibition pre-pandemic and the second one during, was that there is so much talent out there, and there's so many different underrepresented talent that we can represent in the museum. And for us, that's a really, really, really exciting opportunity, actually. So this is, really what we focus on when we curate the exhibition. It gives you a broader perspective of the world because we work with artists who have different perspectives.
Thank you, that's great. Tezos has become a very popular blockchain for art. What do you think characterizes the Tezos art ecosystem, perhaps as distinct from other chains or technologies?
So I think what I hear a lot from artists is that they compare Tezos to like the early days of experimenting with NFT technology, building yourself a bit more open source, a bit more collaborative, and really as a platform for the artists. Whereas some of the earlier blockchains, for example, became it became quite muddy as to what is fine art, what is a collectible, what is a branded piece from a brand testing and learning, what is a Top Shots, a sports type NFT, and it's easy for people to get completely lost in that field of PFPs, NFTs, collectibles, etc. It was really clear that the Tezos platform really curated fine artworks, gave a stage to the artist, gave a space for experimentation, I think more open source. And the community on Tezos is really, really strong. So I started following artists that were exclusively dropping on Tezos. And then through those artists who promoted other artists in their ecosystem, started discovering new artists. So I think that kind of community sense and mutual support was for me really interesting to see and really important. And I think lastly, of course, most importantly, is the fact that in the beginning also of Tezos, it was the more sustainable blockchain. So we work with a lot of artists who make art about sustainability, about the environment, about nature and pollution. And they naturally merged towards the Tezos ecosystem because they were supporting sustainability, as everyone should do. So I think this was also one of the reasons that I started really diving into Tezos ecosystem and collecting on Tezos.
Wonderful, thank you. You touched upon this a little bit, but I just want to dig in a little more. This is a new space, this is a new technology, it's an opportunity to write new rules. What about the traditional art world do you want to make sure doesn't translate into digital art? Like what would you just love to leave behind?
I would love to leave behind the really gated, closed group of galleries, auction houses and institutions that are almost in charge of what is art, what is not, who is an artist, who's going to make it, and how much are people going to pay for it if they want to acquire it. I think that small group of highly influential people making the rules I think that has been shaken up, like upside down, inside out. And I feel that it can be, the utopian vision is obviously to have a more democratic platform for art. The fact that I can collect artists that I want to collect from all over the world, because there is no such kind of tight control from a smaller group. I think I would love that it stays that way. The fact that big tech started owning the internet, let's say, and started collecting our data and selling our data, and the lack of transparency in that, I really hope that that behavior doesn't repeat onto the decentralized blockchain. I hope it doesn't become centralized again. But what I do think is important to bring from the traditional art world is the curatorial rigor, a bit more control when it comes to schemes and crazy rug pulls and the absolute kind of bubble and explosion when it comes to finance costs, the price for these NFTs, and everyone shouting about how much money they made. I think it all became about the money and not necessarily about the worth of the fine art. And I would love to see more of that in the NFT space, and more rigorous curation and more information about who is the artist, what is the work about, what is the background of the artist, what do they mean with it, and less about the high volumes and the high speeds and the numbers, and more about the actual conceptual rigor of the work.
Thank you. We're here at Art Basel, Miami Beach, one of the biggest traditional art events of the year. Do you think that Web3 art, digital art, needs the validation of the traditional art world? Or do you think that we can strike out alone and make new rules?
Unfortunately, I feel that the digital arts, let's say digital art, digital artists movement definitely need the validation from the traditional art world. I also think actually separating them is almost maybe a bit too black and white, because it's almost more like it flows from one to the other. And I also think that, internet art, computer art, gaming art using gaming technology, websites that you could buy have already been here since 60s and 70s. So I think it's not necessarily that the traditional art world now, I don't see it so black and white. But I do think it's important to get the validation from the people who know, who studied, who learned, who have gone through the ropes of the education, also to validate some of the new stuff that's happening. And that's not necessarily playing such a big role in the ecosystem, but I do think it plays a big role, especially for the artist's career, to be recognized by people who understand the art world and who understand their art. And I think that is still important.
First of my final two questions is, do you collect digital art yourself? And if so, what are you typically drawn to as a collector?
I definitely collect digital art. I got really obsessed with it at some point in 2020, 2021. Staying awake at night, bidding in auctions, 3 a.m. in the Netherlands. And I think what I collect specifically is artworks that have a certain either historic value, activist message, or supporting an artist that I really, really like, or I think do really incredible work. So one of the examples is the unsigned NFT that I bought from Operator. Deja and Anya, together with Annika Meijer, curator, they dropped a collection of signatures of female artists, because actually the research shows that when a woman signs her artwork, it becomes less valuable versus men signing their artwork. So they actually said, wait a minute, this is not right. So we're going to drop a bunch of incredible female artists' signatures as NFTs to show the world that the signature of a female artist is worth a lot of money, but also recognition. So that's the art I would like to collect.
The final question, which is one that we ask everybody, and it's a tricky one, but when you think the word blockchain, what is it that comes to mind? Like, what does blockchain mean to you in a word or in a short phrase?
For me, it means out with the old, in with the new, and let's do this together.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.